Okay, now we're going.
Okay.
I'll edit this stuff out too. But
Okay, perfect.
and I don't know how long the video actually will record for, so it might stop at some point. So yeah, I'm gonna have to try to pay attention to this, make sure it's still recording.
We'll just figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess we can introduce ourselves.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Deanna. This is my mom, Rosemary.
Hi.
We're gonna have a talk about some complex things, specifically related to the LDS religion. I used to be a member. I grew up that way, but I'm no longer. And she also grew up that way and is still a member. So we were gonna,
And we love each other.
and we love each other. Yeah, we have a great relationship, and we wanted to talk about that, and kind of show people how we got here, because it wasn't always like this. It was hard for a long time, but yeah, we got to a really, really good place. Yeah, let's start with that. What do you remember about me leaving? Because it was a long time ago now. It was about 20 years ago. And we can talk about that, because for me, because I kind of was out for a little while before I talked to you guys about it, really.
Officially known to all of us.
Yeah.
I was, divorced from your dad and going through getting married and kind of absorbed in my world, but I do remember that I was conscious of what was going on for you and concerned, and this underlying feeling of, I've got to get her back. I've got to get her back. She's off the path. She's wandered, she's strayed, and I've got to get her back. And, having that play out in me contacting your local bishop just to let you know you were there, which I did pretty regularly wherever you moved.
Yeah, you did.
And I would send you copies of talks by general authorities or other people that I felt like were particularly important. Like, could you just please see this from this point of view? Couldn't you just feel how important this is? And the idea of contacting bishops was just, this sort of like, she's got to stay connected somehow. And even though I might attach it to this idea, well, I want you to know that there's somebody to help you if you ever need help. I'm sure it was more still the agenda of, I've got to get her back. I've got to get her back to the church. Just this desperation that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah. And I'm familiar with that. I know exactly, which is part of the reason why I struggled to tell people, because I knew exactly what the thought process was behind someone leaving the church, and all of those feelings, and the pressure to get them back, to bring them back to the fold, that it was some kind of failure if they'd left. And I also knew the reasons that a lot of people, the reasons that I remember being told as to why people left the church, that it was either someone said or did something that they got offended by, so they left, or that they wanted to sin and not feel bad. And I knew that my reasons for leaving had nothing to do with either of those things.
Right.
But I also knew that trying to explain that was not really going to be heard at that time. So I just kind of didn't say anything, because I knew it was going to be a battle. and that we were both staunchly, not just you and I, but like other people that, you're on your side. And it is hard to see, especially in that scenario. It's really hard to see the other person's kind of perspective.
Yeah. There definitely was this whole evolution, and you saying to me, why did you contact our bishop? We're just going to have to be mean to him now. and like, I do remember having a conversation with my now former sister-in-law, but similar things, like the idea of what best communicates love. Like, if that was what I was after, was having the bishop knock on your door the best way to communicate that? So it really was this unlayering of what was really at the heart of my intentions. And yeah, kind of checking into those old stories of people leave because they're tired of sinning and feeling guilty. They just want to be able to sin and feel okay about it. And yeah, I definitely bought into that way of thinking. But when it came to my doorstep, and these are people I love, Deanna is someone I love, and it became so much more real, and I began to see more nuanced, although I still held to this idea: if I just send you the right message, if I just fast enough, if I just lay enough on the altar, it'll bring Deanna back. And it wasn't until a very crucial point, and let's see how far into it we were by then, 10 years probably into your having left, when you came to visit me, and probably a month or two after a general conference, and you were, I remember it so specifically, you were in the bed, sitting up, and we were talking, and I have a conference issue of the Ensign in my hand saying, Deanna, if you would just read these words, these words that to me are the words of living prophets and apostles, if you would just read them and make your judgment about them instead of listening to what other people, what I see as, this group of very cynical people, very bitter, cynical people, filtering it through them, and then you taking that. I just thought, if you could just take this and read it direct from the source. And that seemed reasonable, and I don't think there was anything wrong necessarily with the initial idea of, just look at the source. Like in any kind of research, that's a good thing.
And you want to share something that's powerful and meaningful for you.
So, well, see, that is the heart of it, that it's so powerful and meaningful to me that I, assume surely you will feel them, you will see and recognize, and this will feel like it's delicious to you. And I remember you saying, and just so calmly, but very matter-of-factly, if you give that to me, I will just throw it in the garbage. And I was telling someone about this kind of recently, and expressing, this thing that was so precious to me, represented by these messages, by, people that I revere as inspired leaders, that you would just throw it in the garbage. But the juxtaposition of, and my daughter is so precious to me, kind of threw me off my game. Like I couldn't, to sort of make sense of that, put my mind in a bit of this twist. This is someone precious to me, and I know that's what matters. These words are precious to me. How do I make sense of that? And I think because my brain was in kind of this twist at that second, and it was a microsecond that kind of I was able to have this epiphany, and I consider it from God, that I recognize the voice of God saying to me, stop pretending you know all the answers, because you don't. And I needed that disruption, in what I thought was the approach. Because that just totally threw me off. And I just, in that moment, sitting there thinking, I don't know all the answers. I'm going about this wrong. And just, how that affected me. And I know you had said something about, because that conversation was super meaningful, and I'm pretty sure it happened in that same setting, but it might have been over a period of time. I remember you saying to me, I think it was, that when I heard that, and I just shut up, and you were saying, I know how you feel about Jesus. You've got pictures of him all over your walls. I've lived with you. I know how you feel. Stop preaching and just live what you believe is true. And maybe that's the best way to affect my feelings. I mean, I remember basically that's what something like that was said. Just live what you're saying you believe. Stop preaching. I know. You don't have to keep doing this thing. And it's not as if I could, whether I could or did, it's not as if it like that immediately changed everything in my behavior, my relationship with how I interacted in that situation. But it definitely put me on a different track of like, I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
And what I'm doing that seems like to be the right thing to do, like God is saying, stop it, essentially.
Yeah. Wow. I remember from that conversation too at one point, because I had this continual subscription to like the Ensign magazine that just
That I had given you and
yeah
kept renewing.
yeah, it kept renewing, and I and I had told you at one point, like, all of these articles and everything that you send to me, you think that they are building a bridge between me and the church, but really what it's doing is building a wall between me and you.
Exactly.
And that, I feel like I saw that register in your eyes too, where all of a sudden you were like, this is accomplishing the exact opposite of what I'm actually going for.
Yes, exactly right. God telling me, stop pretending you know all the answers. And basically, you say this thing you're doing is just making this wall.
Yeah.
And so my brain and my heart, something definitely shifted where I could see, this path I was on, pulling you back.
Yeah.
And assuming that somehow I was in the right place, you were in the wrong place. Like that mind shift, and it didn't happen right at that second, but that's what cracked things, my heart and my brain, so that I could begin to realize, kind of have that light shine in, that whole stance, I'm right, she's wrong, is messed up. and is a stuck place and an unloved story.
Yeah, from both positions. I mean, I could have viewed the same thing, and at times I did, because there were times when I left early on, especially, where I was angry and I was hurt and I felt betrayed, and it was painful for me in so many ways. And we get caught up in our own emotions and think what I'm feeling, other people must also be feeling, and thinking that I need to, you're thinking you need to save me, I'm thinking I need to save you, but really it's just creating this distance and divide between us, and neither of us are accomplishing what we're
that kind
going
of
for.
attitude.
Yeah, that kind of attitude.
Regardless of which side it's on.
Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah, because there is, if one of you thinks you're the savior, then you're viewing someone else as needing to be saved, which immediately puts them into a different standing from you, where you are no longer on equal footing, and we are all on equal footing with each other at all times.
Right. It's a it's a lack of love.
And of coming from a place of fear, because I know,
and definitely a place of fear,
how much that is a failure in, from your side, to lose a child out of the church is this, in some way, I think some people take it as a personal failing, and then that gets projected onto the person who left. But all we receive from that end is, you think I'm a failure. You think I've failed at life, and that also creates such a big divide. That I'm right, you're wrong, I'm winning, you're failing.
And I've got to save you. Like you're out there drowning, or you're out there wandering, and I've got to save you and bring you back. And that attitude is so prevalent. And while it comes from a place, or at least we like to think it comes from a place of love and care, it does create so much harm. And so things that can seem like what else am I supposed to do? Like if someone's drowning, you feel like you've got to save them. And so changing that mindset, they're not drowning. I mean, that's all still a very huge thing to change the paradigm and the mindset of believing there's this very linear path, and anything that's a variation from that is drowning or death or whatever.
That there's only one path and one way to get to the destination or the proper destination, or
Right.
yeah,
There's so many layers of that can become, so stressful to think that either I or my children are somehow falling behind, are off the track, and for me, literally thinking like her eternal salvation will be ruined. Like, how can I not do everything I can to try to get her back?
yeah,
Because it's all like, and just having to question that kind of thing that I thought I knew the answer,
yeah,
questioning that has been a super powerful journey for me in coming to know God better, that that's not who he is. Someone that creates a very narrow side to everything. And if you fall off, you're out of there.
yeah.
But that more, I find myself more and more feeling like life for all of us is a curriculum, and not this big good or bad kind of
pass fail test.
Pass fail test.
Yeah.
That it's experience.
Yeah.
So for me, I think a lot of like the personal journey with religious scrupulosity as a form of obsessive compulsive behavior has been huge. And I feel like the gift of Deanna leaving the church just opened a lot of growth for me personally in having to, not having to, but choosing to think deeply about, you don't know all the answers for me. You don't know all the answers. And that invited a rethinking and a careful examination, measured out in doses that I could manage, and continues to be true, to kind of look at and examine my relationship with God and life, and just look at it so completely different. And once, beginning to do that, seeing how much my life has been driven by this very unhealthy, OCD kind of way of living my religion that has been so much about shame and fear, and coming to know God better than that. Like, that's not, that's his fingerprints are not there. And so, anyway.
Yeah. I think we've actually come to I think we now have a more similar view of God than we maybe ever have before, but coming from such different areas, because that's exactly the God I know is not one that deals in shame and guilt. It's the ultimate loving parent, and you want your children to be happy and healthy and to live their own lives, or their best lives, and to become their best selves. And that's what any loving parent wants for their children, no matter how they get there, just to be living your best life and being your best self. Yeah.
Right. And trusting the plan, the system, the way life is set up to give all of us exactly what we need.
Yeah.
So do you mind if I share a little about coming to see you in Salt Lake, when I seriously, when it looked like you were ready to end your life?
Yeah, I was in a really bad place. Yeah.
That was also really huge for me. Basically you had kind of asked me not to bring up Jesus, not to bring up, so I felt kind of limited in what I could offer you. And what that experience, so much of it was about me wanting to rescue you. And also, Dan had called me on the phone, and I knew that she, felt in this very desperate, dark place. And it frightened me. I didn't know what I had to offer her, and this sense of that I'm supposed to fix this for her. So I guess why I'm bringing it up is it was an opportunity to, again, approach the interaction in a whole different way. I made this decision by the next morning that I was going to go to Salt Lake. I was, 4 hours away, and that I was going to go to Salt Lake and be there for her. Just be there. I didn't know what it would look like. And it felt clear that that was important for me to do. And I was trying to tune into, and still it's a balance for me of tuning into what is the needed good and what is just my fear driving me. And in this case, it seemed like the best thing to do would be to be physically there with you. And like I said, I didn't know what that would look like, and I didn't know if you would receive me. I didn't know if it would make you angry that I had done that, if I was overstepping, this what felt like at that time a pretty delicate relationship in some ways. The boundaries where Deanna was defining her boundaries and I was trying to respect them. And the tools that I felt like I had to offer had everything to do with my faith in God. So I didn't know what I had to offer. And I think it was the perfect setting, once again, for God to speak to me. And Deanna, I called her and she was willing to have me come. And, okay, I can bring groceries. I can, and basically what it was just me coming and sitting once again at the foot of your bed in your environment. And it was kind of terrifying because I knew that all of this toxicity was erupting like a volcano, just so much toxicity that you were dealing with, and me wanting so desperately, feeling like I was supposed to solve it for you. I'm your mother, and I'm a disciple of Christ. Like somehow I need to solve this for her. And you are already telling me that, me mentioning the night before, well, I look to Jesus. Or I think I had texted you that morning saying something like, I really have to give things to Jesus. And you were saying later that's such a trigger for you. Like, why did I do that when you had asked me not to? And so trying to, realizing while I sat there, and one part of me wanted to just run out of the room because it was so heavy what you were, what was oozing out was, and some of it definitely, harm that I was responsible for in your life. I couldn't not see that the way you felt about yourself and self-loathing and just a lot of things. I realized there were things that I was very much responsible for. Like it all became so much that I literally just wanted to run out of the room. But internally, just having this conversation going on with God, like, what do I do? And again, feeling very clearly God tell me basically to anything, just sit there and love Deanna. Just love her. Like, changed your whole thought process about what fix looks like, and just sit here with her and love her. And I believe at that time the words came really clearly: love, listen, learn. But the strongest one definitely was just love her. And that was, that kind of drained the tension out of me in this state of like panic over, I can't handle this. It's too scary. And I don't know how to fix it. It just kind of drained that because I'm like, I can love her. Yeah. Like I already do. Just, that's what you're asking me to do. Just love her. And that felt so right and felt so good. And it was no longer anything that, that was a surrender. Like, give it to God.
Yeah.
Just love her.
Yeah. And that was so much more powerful and meaningful for me than anything related to the church or God or any of that given to me. You just showing up and being there was exactly what I needed. And it could have, it wouldn't have been as powerful had you given into the other voices in your head telling you how to behave. That was, man. Yeah, so much of that. And I mean, before that, your attitude had also changed, where I did feel like, you had a somewhat of a change where you stopped with kind of the preachiness and did just show up as love. And it took a little while, but that softened my heart to then be able to open up to you even more, because
Right.
I was just getting just love. I wasn't getting an agenda from you, because that feels so, it's hard. I don't know how to describe it. It feels oppressive. It feels judgmental. It feels judgy. It feels, and it doesn't feel like love is what it is. It feels like an agenda. It feels like you're trying to get me to do or be a certain thing to serve your needs, not even for my own benefit. But just being loved feels like it's for my benefit, that I'm just able to receive that from you, and that is beneficial to me, and that is strengthens our relationship. Yeah, yeah. And that moment, that time that you came up, yeah, that was perfect. That was exactly what I needed. Yeah.
And apparently what I needed.
Yeah.
Exactly what I needed.
Yeah, right. This
I was
scary, horrible
starting to
time.
get to where I could do the other thing in more comfortable settings. I could do that other thing of not be preachy, but in turn the fire up in this situation where your need was so great and where it was so uncomfortable for me. Yeah. Could I still do that? Could I still do this thing of just love you? And yeah, I didn't know that I could until it happened.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I do feel like that has been like one of the kind of transformational. I think we've had several kind of transformational experiences in our relationship.
Been thinking about, I mean, they've been coming up, and I don't know if you want me to kind of address some of them.
Yeah, whatever you want to talk about.
I mean,
yeah.
So I don't know, in the chronology of things, just the way, just for my personal growth, there are these things that I can pinpoint as, yeah, that was pivotal for me. That was a big turning point. You came with a boyfriend, or you were coming with a boyfriend to my house. And yeah, that was really huge for me. I'd grown up where I had a foster sister who brought a boyfriend, and I'm in my teenage years, and they were so clear, you do not sleep with him in our house. And I think I'd even done that with you before in your grandparents' home, you've got to respect this. And you were coming to my home with a boyfriend, and, I'm doing this thing. And so part of it is, it's just so much the training and the cultural belief that this is the way you're supposed to handle it. I mean, this is putting God first, and learning that's not putting God first. Love is first. That's what God puts first. But this was an example of when that happened. You were coming with a boyfriend and expecting, I don't even know that you said that, but I just said, oh, and don't plan on sleeping in the same bed together while you're here. Yeah. And the catch in your voice, what? And me saying something like, well, you could set up a tent in the yard. I mean, now it's so embarrassing to even admit this. But I'm saying to my own daughter, you can't come to my home. If you want to camp out in the yard, you can sleep together. It's just such a messed up, how did I, and anyway, saying that, and I could tell you were kind of crying on the other end of the phone, and after I talked to you, I think I called my stepson's wife, and she had called me, and I just brought it up, and she goes, I can't remember the conversation exactly, but it helped me kind of rethink, what I was saying, because I knew, in fact, I think just within the last month before that, or 2 months, I'd picked a guy up off the road to give him a ride, or, and I was willing to invite him home to stay in our home, or if there had been a couple, that's what came to my mind. If I had picked up a couple off the road that were obviously, needing some help, and I would let them sleep in a bed at my house. I wouldn't say, and by the way, are you married? Because you're not going to sleep in a bed together in my house if you're not married. But all of those things coming to my mind that just helped me realize this was so crazy. And I don't remember the time frame, if I called you back right away or if it was the next morning and said, oh, I'm so sorry, please just come. You know, did I want my daughter? And I think that was what my, you know, my daughter-in-law helped me kind of see, like, what's the message here? You know, will this help her best to say, you can't do this thing that God says not to, that I believe God says not to do, whatever, you know, will that help her best? Or will it communicate your love to her better if you just welcome them, you know, in? And that became really clear. And that was a big turning point for me. Like, because it was back to that, am I going to let this wall come down, or am I going to use this religious, what I believe is, you know, these things that were never meant to be walls, that the whole idea of the gospel of Jesus Christ is love. It isn't, you know, people put up, Pharisees included, you know, put up fences to protect you from getting this far to the edge, but the fences were not the point.
Yeah.
And we make them the point, you know, and drive people away because we make them the point, when the point is love.
Yeah.
Can we love? So that was another time that was really, really big in changing my heart. And
yeah, I remember that too. And I do remember, when you called me and you were like, actually, never mind. Like, it's fine. And that was, I mean, shocking to me that, and that you had kind of made that change so quickly. But that, I mean, and that was another thing that did, like, help open my heart more to say, like, oh, okay, she is really willing to accept me and love me as I am without trying to change me.
Such crazy fear-based thinking. You know, part of it, I mean, I had a teenage son at home, and or, you know, close to that age, and thinking, well, this will set a really bad example for him. But definitely it opened up the opportunity for conversation. And actually, you know, when he was in a relationship, and I knew it was a very involved relationship and they weren't married, and I mean, it already kind of laid the groundwork. Do I love, or do I put up a wall? And had I put up a wall, because he and his girlfriend were going to live together regardless, and they probably, you know, if I'd have said, this is not acceptable in my household, it basically would have said, you are not acceptable. This relationship is not acceptable. And for me, it was just so clear. It's back to that, what had happened before with you. It was back to that. This is love. How do I best, if I hope to have any any influence in their lives that is good, do I want to build walls to keep them away? And the idea of saying to him, basically, you know how I feel about this, and you know that I love you. I want you to be here. And so they lived in my basement, you know. And that was a huge step for me.
Yeah, that was huge.
And, you know, it was the idea that be here where I can love you.
Yeah.
Again, just, I want to meet you where you're at and love you the way God loves me and meets me where I'm at. Like that, and that's so huge. Just trying to reach for that kind of grace instead of believing that these fences are God. They're not. And that's not to say that, and this is, you know, something that I, you know, regularly am working on to have to keep my balance in all of this. There are standards that I choose to live by, but it's not my job to impose them. And I choose to live them as an offering to God of my love. And when I can distill it down to that, you know, I don't impose that on anybody else.
Yeah. Because yeah, you don't know what anybody else, they may be doing the same thing. You know, I view a lot of my life as the same way. Like being my truest, most authentic self is an offering to the divine, to and to myself. Yeah, that's a really, I think that's a really beautiful way to put it, is that the way I live is an offering to God, and assuming the same of everyone else, no matter how they're living, no matter what their life is, that they are also, you know, at least they're on their path, and whatever their path is, it is none of my business.
Right.
And that all of the paths do not look the same. We are all on our very own individual path. If the path is cleared for you, you are on someone else's path. You are not even on your own path. If the path is too easy, you got to get on your own path.
Okay. Yeah. If all the weeds and debris is cut down.
Yeah, that's somebody else's path you're walking on. Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, and I think that's what I was trying to do so much. Like, well, my parents did this, and therefore that's the right thing to do. And certainly over the last 40 years of being a parent, 40 plus years, you know, learning that's I can't. It's not okay to use that standard of what my parents did. That was right for them, and my journey is a different one.
Yeah.
And it's not a lesser than. It is. It's exactly valid. It's exactly what it needs to be. And and there isn't this failure thing. A right way to live and be happy. Now, you know, like the children's song. There's a right way to live and be happy. I mean, more and more that we attach a story to what that looks like, what that's supposed to look like. Yeah. But more and more, it does look like love, and how that plays out is different than I definitely thought of it years ago. You know, that love would look like this. You have to keep these rules. You have to be in my church. You have to live this way.
And we do. I mean, and you know, giving yourself some grace as well, that we do. You know, we parent the way we saw our parents parent, essentially, unless we're very intentional about it. And it's hard to be intentional and to pull yourself back and be like, wait a minute, is this actually the best way to go about this? And having seen so much growth in you, like I have so much respect and admiration for that, because I mean that is, you know, you started parenting in the way that, you know, so your parents were parented, that you were told to parent, that these other ways.
I was trying to do that, but I don't even think I did that very well at all.
But once you kind of like abandoned that more, and you were just kind of like, I'm just going to do the best I can in this situation, in this family, and look at it as its own independent kind of thing, like, yeah, I feel like your parenting got better and you got happier and healthier as a person.
Yeah, I think so. And I keep thinking, like, I really love this passage from Isaiah about restore of the breach, repair of paths to dwell in. And like, I learn different layers of that all the time. And in the book of Jeremiah 31, like, it talks about building up and tearing down and regrowing and building it, like, and my little granddaughter just saying the other day in pickleball, you have to be bad before you can be good. You have to be bad at it before you can be good at it. Like the idea of, we try to build it this certain way that we think it's supposed to be, just so that it can be broken down, you know, almost like learning these rules and then learning how to break them in a way that allows greater growth. That's kind of a Richard Rohr thing from Following Up or whatever his book is, but that idea that something has to, anyway, that passage, restore of the breach, repair of paths to dwell in, like one time when I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was going through a terrible divorce, and this is divorce number 2 after, you know, 2 20-year marriages that had both ended in divorce, and that it was like this amazing, totally unexpected epiphany, and feeling like I was always such a failure at parenting. This amazing epiphany that passage came to my mind, and I'm in my brain, I'm going, oh, that's my youngest son, restore of the breach, repair of paths to dwell in. And God said, no, I'm talking about you. And I just thought, how is that me? And the fact that it is me, in the respect that I failed really good, like really well. I did this
so well.
Yeah, I failed so well. Like I broke it so good that now new growth can happen.
Yeah.
for myself and my children.
Yeah.
That's just this turned on its head kind of thing.
Yeah, that's such a hard concept. Like that's so that actually the way to get to more growth is through destruction.
Yeah.
Sometimes sometimes that is the best thing that can happen to you, is hitting rock bottom, is having everything burned to the ground, is and sometimes that is what really rebirths it, and we fight against that so much. It's our natural inclination, and I think in our society we're taught to fight against that so hard.
Right.
But sometimes the best thing you can do is just embrace it and enjoy the fall, and then
it seems terrifying. But, but I think there really is something absolutely to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is, that comes up so much in our culture when we look at things from the Old Testament, the Book of Mormon, when Jacob talks about, the parable of the olive garden. There's a whole bunch of like grafting and burning something and replanting and digging up, and like there's and somehow we have it in our we're getting so much better, but in our current Latter-day Saint culture, where this idea that it's got to look so perfect, and that's just absolutely not true. That's this weird cultural thing we have developed and clung to, and that's got to get broken so that and it is getting broken.
I think us as a society in general have this like perfectionistic attitude that is so toxic. That's so toxic, because perfection is not a real thing, I don't think, in like other than like in mathematical terms. Like nothing is perfect, and nor can it ever be, and it's a false.
What's that? Like Fibonacci is actually like, what is that? Like it's actually an imperfection that creates something like
the irrationality of pi, like different, like I don't.
I guess I can't speak to all that because I really don't understand it.
But in some of math, there really is there is order in the chaos. And in nature, you see the same thing too. Absolutely. It can look like chaos, but there's order in the chaos.
There's all this decay going on, and rebirth and decay.
And just how far you're zooming out. It looks like order when you're close. You come out, it's chaos, and then it's order, and then it's chaos. And
we get really scared of that. But I think you're right. I'm just embracing this is just life happening. This is a process.
There's stuff going on in psychology too, like this is where I first heard it, but the idea that conflict is actually what brings you closer together. Conflict is an opportunity for connection, and it brings you so much closer together than and we have this idea of we need to just avoid all conflict at all times.
That's how I grew up.
Yep.
Avoid all conflict.
Yep. And that's actually...
Don't be angry. Just be nice. Always be so nice.
Yeah. And with the idea that if we're that way, then that will strengthen our relationship. But actually that creates so much distance in your relationship. Then you're just both polite to each other all the time, and it's not a real connection.
So true.
Yeah.
And I guess that, why you and I are growing closer and closer all the time is because we have dealt with the conflict. We haven't. Because the love runs deeper, it was never like, okay, you left the church, you just go do your own thing. Like, I can't deal with you being different than I am, so don't show up.
Right.
And ruin my story.
My story looks so perfect without you in it, is the message you're sending, and how painful to hear that as a child. I mean, when really, like you just said, the conflict is the gift. Like we're born into go to school in this place of conflict, of unlove, of all these crazy incongruencies. Like that's what it is. Go learn there. And to think that we try to believe that it's supposed to be this perfect story. It's not. It's go experience imperfection. Right? Because how boring is a story if there's no conflict? There's no challenge. There's no nothing. Then it's just...
And people could say that to me at one point, and I go, but internally I was like, that's crazy. Of course we're supposed to be perfect. How silly that you're saying something different. Or the idea of loving oneself. I used to think, and then inside, that's not a real thing. I mean, it's huge. Like cracking this open Yeah, and I did call you one time, like we were doing therapy together, and I found myself saying, like, I think after the therapy session, like it was Zoom, and you were still struggling with this sense of worthlessness, and honestly, very authentic things came out of me to share with you, and one that surprised me as I was saying it was, and you left the church, like you pioneered this thing, because the rest of them, followed your pioneering, and actually that's been super good. I found myself saying that, and it was so real and true. That's been so good for me and so good for our family.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I never thought, right? And I
Yeah.
never thought. And so and knowing that that was true as anything that I had spoken and the Spirit confirmed it was true, that was true. And I knew it. And so, yeah, it like the whole way of looking at things continued to shift.
Yeah.
And continues to shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, thinking about that right now, like where we are now, and thinking about you saying, yeah, like you leaving the church was a good thing, and then trying to jump back into being when I first left the church, and just trying to imagine those words ever coming out of your mouth, like never would have imagined that. So like, well, how incredible that what like we could come to a place of peace about it, and like happiness for each other, because because I'm, like I don't want you to leave the church. I am happy for you in the church. It makes you happy. It makes you a better person. I want that for you. And I don't care how you get that. Whatever makes you happy and makes you a better person, go towards that. Yeah. And
I can trust that. I want to bring up a couple of things, relative to, say, temple or tithing, which are really hot, issues, differences in the way we see things.
Yeah.
But something that I also want to say is, because you said, looking back to when you left the church, and then me saying to you, like, thank you for leaving the church, and you never thought those words would come out of my mouth. So I don't know how many years ago you hatched this idea, and it was after like a videoing us working through, like in a respectful, loving way. You hatched this idea how many years ago? And so it was when I was, working, coming home from my job, and we started this conversation. And just the fact that we could have these long, beautiful conversations, and we're having this long, beautiful conversation. I get home to my house. We're having it in the car. I get home to my house. There's no lights on. The house is kind of cold. And I don't even care, because I'm in this conversation with you. And then you bringing up, and we just talk about so many things that we relate to, and just this beautiful common ground, and that I always love what I can learn from you. And you're saying, like, the words that came out of your mouth that I thought never would was this idea of, Mom, like, not everybody has baby boomer parents that can talk like we do. How would you feel about me, maybe videoing or taping some of our conversations, just to model that this can happen for people? Like, you have no idea what that felt like to me, because of the story of, from the time you were little, the failure of a mom that I saw myself as, just an absolute failure as your mother, who would lose it regularly because you always had such a huge personality in this little body, and there was so much stress in my life that this little person was just like, and so I would continually feel so horrible about how I wasn't the mother that you needed me to be. So how would this person be saying to me now, like, you and I could do this thing that would model, for other people? Was just like, I mean, I tried to stay calm in the conversation, but internally I was just like, God, how is it done? Like, that, how did this happen? And literally after I, after we hung up, I literally just dropped to my kitchen floor, my tile floor, and just wept and saying, how is it done? Like, God, this is so beautiful. And that's actually when I had this beautiful little epiphany vision of you and I before we ever came. And, I just hold it as something God gave me that I was able to receive. I'm not saying I know exactly what our relationship was before we came to this place, Earth School, but in that moment, there was this sense of like, oh my gosh, it's Deanna, and I've always loved hanging out with her. Like, before I ever came, before our relationship was defined in this way, you were just always somebody I loved hanging out with, and just so big, and like I loved the way your mind worked and your ability to, the vastness of this you, and that, yeah, that I probably, was your fan, like, and that I'm saying to you in that little epiphany, like it all happened so fast, but this image of me saying to you, and did you hear that we're going to Earth and I'm gonna be your mom? Like, and going, and this sort of thing, and you saying to me, yeah, in this plan everything gets turned on its head, and me saying, but what if and using these words, like our premortal selves, what if I really suck at it? And this soberness passing between us, like, and you kind of going, like it was a serious, sober thing. Yeah, you probably will. But remember, like like there's Jesus. Like everything will get turned on its head, but it's going to be okay. There's Jesus. And now that was what my brain could hold and comprehend, and it was beautiful. And it's like this gift that God gave to me that was so, so beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, yeah. I remember you telling me this, and that, yeah, it just gets me every time.
Yeah. Me too.
Wow.
Because it changed. I mean, it changed. Like when I could remember, just think about, well, what if, I believe it was something like that, even if it wasn't that exact scenario, or maybe I was catching very literally, this conversation, some exchange that had happened between us, and I could comprehend it in that way, just so perfect in putting me in a place in the relationship with you where I'm kind of like, yeah, it's a turned on its head sort of thing, and I'm so grateful that like it's gonna be okay, like, and I don't have to go back to that space of, but I'm mom and she's my daughter, and like I'm messing things up, or it's supposed to look like this, that I can, it really expanded my my whole vision of the relationship, and I'm open to more, expansion of like, I don't have all the answers. It's back to, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what the picture is, but I love what I'm learning, what I, and God, I do believe God gives us whatever we're ready for, and I can't go, I nailed it. That's it. That's the story, that I want to be open to. Well, this is what I can receive right now. And I'm happy for that. And I'm open to whatever else you want to tell me, God, because I know I don't know all the answers.
Yeah. What a freeing thing. Like,
yeah, it is. It's super. And it's just putting, like, God's got this, like, whatever that means, it means it's okay. It's like, yeah, his ways, God's ways are higher than mine. And I'm okay with that. And like Job said, I'm sorry, God, I spoke of things that were too wondrous for me to even begin to understand, but I trust you. And that's, or like Nephi saying, the vision, he wanted to know the meaning of his dad's vision. And the Spirit said to him, knowest thou the condescension of God? And I really love his answer, like, no, but I know he loves his children, like love. I know I can trust that. And then there's just so much more that will open up as I'm ready, but right now, that's good enough. I just know he loves us. God loves us.
Yeah. Oh. Wow. That was quite the ride we just took.
Amen.
Yeah. Dang. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to say, or? I feel like you said a lot of things really beautifully, and so.
And me too. I think that's a good dose. Like,
yeah.
There is more, but yeah. That's it. Really, I think when I'm sharing things with people who, children, have chosen a different path, and I know I've kind of got your permission to share things, and these are things that are huge in what I share, that I know everybody's story can be slightly different, but just sharing something that creates an open door for somebody, like, oh, maybe look at it differently in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, these are some of the things that I've shared.
Yeah.
That I know have meaning, purpose, have value.
Yeah. 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 Oh, I love you.
I love you. Thank you for who you are.
Thank you for you. Thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah.
What a privilege! What an amazing, like I said, like. I remember one time I'm on a step stool in the kitchen, and 3-year-old you was going, "Didn't I tell you not to climb on that stool?" Like you've always had this huge personality inside of this little body, and you were born to 2 really stupid people. and just the grace that, you know, like of all of this, my failures or bumbling my way through parenthood, and your grace in growing up in that environment and being damaged and wounded by it, and arriving somewhere at this space where we can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll do a video on that too. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Okay.